This tutorial we're going to cut, erase, and join and play around with a few features. So if you want to follow along, open up the shapes area. Also go down into here into the erase tool. Your thing might also be on the scissor tool. Click and pull the erase and the scissors over. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make an ellipse tool. Shift select that. And then let's say if you wanted this circle divided in half, how are you going to go about doing that? So I'm going to go View and go to the rulers and show rulers. And then inside of rulers, I have these things called guides that I can use. So I'm going to want to know the exact halfway point when I'm on the circle. So when I click off the circle, I can't see it. But when I'm on it, I can see here, here, and here, these 3 dots is the midpoint. If I go to my black arrow, go up into the rulers, click and drag down, you'll see there's a line coming down. And when I click and I let go, this line here is called a guide. If I go to save this as a JPEG or print it, this is an invisible line that I can only see inside of Illustrator. So again, I click on this makes sure the guide is directly in the middle. There it goes, it locked in, so I know that that is the exact midpoint of my circle. So this is just a good little tutorial for you to follow along to learn how to cut things. So there's be 2 ways to kind of cut this circle. I'm going to go and open up the Pathfinder. So I like repeating things. And what I could do here is I could go make a rectangle and then click that rectangle along the guide there where I know it's halfway. The rectangle color is arbitrary. I'm just going to make it yellow so you can see what's going on. I'm going to make that a no stroke. So now I have the yellow and the circle selected. So I could go Shift, select both of those things, and then use the Pathfinder to cut away. And now I have this cut away. And you can see that that is halfway, the half circle point. So that's one way of doing it with your Pathfinder. I've undone that. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to show you the other way to do it. When you're in this mode, you can see the colors, or if I change the color to a gradient, I can see the gradients. This is referred to as preview mode inside of Illustrator. If I hit Control Y, you can see that it goes into what they call wireframe mode. So if I'm on that, and no matter what I change the color or the foreground or stroke color to, I can't see anything because all the wireframe mode is concerned with is the paths. So if I hit Control Y again, you can see that it comes back into the preview mode so I can see my colors, whatever color I've selected up here and whatnot. So this is really important distinction between this mode and the wireframe mode. So I can now see my colors. But what I find difficult to do, let's say if I zoom in and I'm going around and I'm trying to make changes to my shape and whatnot, sometimes I find it difficult, the more complex that you go, is to know what you're grabbing onto. So if you hit Control Y, then the only thing you see is the path, so you know exactly what you're doing. So try this. You've got your circle made. Hit Control Y, go into the wireframe mode. You know where the midway point here of the circle is. Thanks to the guide, you can see those things. Then go to the scissors tool. Here, click on the scissor tool. Then go down, hover over the anchor point, and click the scissor. So what you've done now with the scissors is you've cut that point there, and you've cut that point there. And if you're wanting to experiment a little more with the scissors, you can go anywhere on the path and click, and it's created a cut mark on that. area there. So the scissors actually cut the object. So now if I go here to where I had cut it and remove these things, you can see that it has now been cut. If I use using the white arrow tool, select this line and hit delete, and keep hitting delete. Now go Control Y, and you can see that it has been cut with the scissors. But I find in this mode, I prefer to work in the wireframe mode when I'm doing my work, more detailed work. But you can continue to work in the preview mode if you want, but I prefer the wireframe mode. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and delete that area there, go to this side and delete that side there. So this is what the scissors are used for. They're actually used for cutting parts of your shapes or objects. Now I want to join this and this point together. So I select that anchor point there. I hold the Shift key down and select that. So I have them both selected. I right click and I click join, and now that is joined together. I'm going to hit the space bar so my hand comes up and I can just move that back into position. So Command or Control Y, back and forth, and that's how another way that I can slice an object in half. You can see that it was much easier when I had this circle, when I first made the circle, make a little mini one here, and then went to my rectangle, Shift select both of those. It was a much easier process to do that, but there's going to be times where you want a more detailed process, where you're going to want to go into a shape or something and use the scissors to cut areas out and then join areas together. But that's the process, and now you know how to do that. So I'm going to delete this little side one that I was just demoing the ease of Pathfinder here. So now what I'm going to do, if you're following along here, I've got my half bowl kind of thing made here. Let's just say that I'm going to go to my rectangle tool, and I'm going to make a long rectangle here. For purposes of this, I'm just going to make it not bother with a stroke right now. Sometimes I find when you're modifying things, sometimes the stroke gets in the way. It's always good to work with your shape, and then if you want a stroke on your shape, throw it on after you're done. So people often ask about the eraser, so I'm going to go and I'm going to make my eraser size bigger. Now the way that I'm making this circle bigger is beside the P key, you'll see two bracket keys. Those are the quick keys to make your brush stroke bigger or smaller. So if I'm hitting the right one, that makes it bigger. If I hit the left bracket key, it makes it smaller. And then I could just go in place and make some changes like that. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to use my hand. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and I'm going to want a little bit of a bump or a half circle at the bottom here. Let's make that a little bit smaller till it touches the edges. And that's another way to erase part of an object. Now I've done that. I'm going to make this a little bit thinner. So I'm going to go to my black arrow tool. I'm going to scale that part in a little bit. And now that's done. Maybe I'm just going to make this a little different color. Maybe I'm going to make that black. And okay, so I've got something in mind here. I'm thinking maybe an umbrella. So I'm going to want this shape here lined up pretty much in the middle if I can. So I'm going to go over here. Now I've got my rulers here. With my black arrow tool, click and drag over here and put another guide right in the middle. Line that up with those three dots here. And now I know that's somewhat in the middle. I can click on this. I can zoom in. Click on this part here. There's my middle part. I know that's my mid area. I can just shift that over, and now I know that that's directly in the center of this. You could turn this into a straw. If I flip it over, I could start turning it into an umbrella, whatever I want. But I'm going to want this black shape behind the half circle shape. So to review that, if I select this shape, control click, go to arrange, send to back, now I have that behind that shape. So a little simple tutorial to go over, how to cut a half circle with Pathfinder or the scissors. Control Y, going between wireframe and preview mode. Using the erase tool maybe to erase part of a shape. You can do all sorts of things. Now, if I wanted to flip this over and turn this into some sort of umbrella, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this, shift select this. So I've selected both of those. I'm going to right click. I'm going to join them together or group them. I'm going to group them. I am going to group them together. And then I can just go and rotate that object wherever I want, and they're grouped together. If at some point I wanted to get rid of my guides, all I have to do is select the guide and hit delete, and that will get rid of my guides. If you don't want the rulers showing, you just go back into view. You can go into rulers and you can say hide rulers. So now you don't have the ruler around the edge anymore. And another little tip that I can give you, let's say if you're making something like this and you're wanting to create some shade. Let's say if you're following along in this tutorial, I'm going to hit the black arrow, or V is the short key, move this umbrella-ish shape over here. I'm going to make a circle here just to give myself a light source. So I'm going to make that yellow. I find it's best just to work with simple shapes and then build on those shapes and create detail. I even find it easier before I'm adding a lot of gradients just to throw in a solid color and then start tweaking things with gradients after. So say if this was my sun coming down and hitting this here, and I wanted this part of the umbrella to be lighter and this part to be darker, you could do lots of things. You could come in and you could make a pen shape here. You could even come to the curvature. So if I was to do a curvature area here, you could come up into here. So there you go. I've made my curvature. And then I can go and I can select a similar green to what I've got. Now that's almost the exact same green. I can double click on the foreground, and then I can slide my thing up to pick a little bit of a lighter area for the green like this. And now I've got sort of a highlight made. So I could just keep doing that. If I need something a little brighter, I could even go and tint it down here in this slider here and go okay. And then you've got kind of like a reflected light thing coming off of the sun. So that was with the curvature tool here. Now let's say if I could also, if you're interested in exploring the paintbrush, you could find a brush tip. I could make that tip a little bit bigger by hitting the right bracket key. And then I could go along here and make a little paintbrush mark there if I wanted to. And likewise, select this shape here. Okay, so now I've made this little stroke here. It's the same color as this, but if I want this one to be a little darker because it's coming away from the sun, I could just double click on the stroke color there and then darken that area there and adjust, another green color there. And then that would change that. So you could start actually coming in and shading your umbrella with brush strokes or curvature things, whatever you want it to do. And then you could start really making your thing more detailed. I'm preferring kind of for the style of this, the brush stroke. So I'm going to go and I'm going to delete the curvature one I made. So if I want to make another one here, I could save myself time by just going Control C, Control V. There's the stroke. And if I wanted to, up into this area here, there's a rotate tool, and inside the rotate tool is the reflect tool. So I could double click on the reflect, make sure the preview is selected, and you can see that I can flip it horizontally or vertically. So I don't have to spend time remaking the thing. So I flip that vertically, that looks pretty good. If I go here to the black arrow tool, I could rotate that into place there. And then just double click on the color here. Make it a little bit brighter because it's closer to the sun, or you could keep it dark, whatever looks good. Okay, that's a little bit, I'm not being able to see that, so double click, let's make that even brighter. Okay, a little more yellowish. And there you go. So just a quick tutorial on, adding a little bit of shading with your brush or your curvature tool and thinking about a light source.